Welcome back. This is Sunday edition here on KTN News. Let's talk about the war on corruption. This past week has seen a flurry of activity on that front. Earlier in the week, it was former Governor of Nairobi, Evans Kidero, was arrested, spent a night at the Integrity Center cells, was arraigned in court and released on a 2 million cash bail. And then in the wee hours of Saturday morning, it was Mohammed Swazuri, chairman of the National Land Commission, as well as the MD of the Kenya Railways Corporation, Atanas Maina, and around 7 others were also arrested concerning fraudulent, what has been called fraudulent compensation claims in regards to the standard gauge railway. Let's take a look at the details first.
We are here to do our work. These cowards only who resign. We are here. Mimi niko hapa. Hamnitoi wala hamwezi kunifanya lolote.
They say pride comes before a fall. That was on July 25th when defiant National Land Commission Chair Mohammed Swazuri emphatically stated he is not going anywhere. 2 weeks later, he is now a guest of state and will remain in custody until Monday, when they will be arraigned. On Saturday morning, EACC detectives pounced on 8 out of the 17 suspects who are being investigated over fraudulent acquisition and compensation of land belonging to the Kenya Railways at the Railways Yard in Embakasi. They are Professor Mohammed Swazuri, Tom Chavangi, Atanas Maina, Dr. Salome Munubi, Francis Mugo, Gladys Muyanga, Caroline Kitui, and Obadia Wainaina. The deal in question involved top officials in the National Lands Commission and Kenya Railways.
The two entities decided to buy off from the Kenya Railways itself to give to the same Kenya Railways for the purposes of erecting the SGR station here at Embakasi.
Those on the EACC wanted list are Victor Kariuki, Elijah Nyamu, John Moneki, Peter Mburu, David Some, Esther Some, Kebuko Investments Limited, Dasahe Investments Limited, and Olomotite Estates. The suspects have been directed to present themselves at the Integrity Center forthwith.
Upon review of the same report and the recommendations therein, the Director of Public Prosecutions concurred with the EACC recommendations that there is sufficient evidence to charge the suspects with several offenses of corruption and economic crimes.
The Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, who says his office is preparing necessary charges against the suspects, was here at the EACC for a meeting with the CEO, which lasted about an hour before he hurriedly left without addressing the media. Another weekend, another round of dramatic arrests at the revolving doors of the EACC. Out of the 17 that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has lined up for arrests, 8 will be spending their weekend behind these revolving doors. Duncan Hemba, KTN News.
Thank you, Duncan. Dismas, do you think Nurdin Haji is going out about this the right way, cranking up the pressure at the right time?
Well, in my view, Haji is doing a very good job. I mean, one can easily say so far, so good. But at the end of the day, success is going to be determined by the number of convictions and assets that have been recovered.
Yes.
Haji can authorize the arrest of all Kenyans who are suspected of having participated in corruption. All the corruption architects can be arrested.
For a long time, Kenyans have cried out for the big fish to be fried. Do you think this, the arrest of former Nairobi governor, the caliber of arrest, do you think it fits the bill?
When Kenyans have been saying that we want to see the big fish being fried, they meant that they don't want just to see the fish being taken out of the lake. They want to see it being fried on the table. And that will only happen if these corruption architects are convicted, say, for 10 years, and the Kipchumba would advise us on how many years these guys are supposed to go in, maybe 50 years, number one. and their assets recovered, the ones they've stolen from the public coffers. Like, for instance, the Honorable Baraza has indicated that when somebody who is suspected of having stolen a fortune is given a cash bail of 2 million bob, then what are you really telling Kenyans? And President Kenyatta should know that people are going to remember his presidency not because of the Big Four, but on his ability to kill corruption. Because the Big Four agenda is going to be a successful failure, and his presidency is going to be a successful failure if he does not kill corruption. And right now, he's got the requisite political capital to kill corruption. He's got Raila Odinga is supporting this fight, Musalia Mudavadi, even Wetangula is supporting this corruption fight, and Kalonzo. Every single Kenyan is supporting him. So it's up to him to ensure that everybody has got the political will. And as a challenge to the Honorable Baraza, and I'm not sure whether the relevant parliamentary committee has had the occasion of going to China to get best practices on fighting corruption, maybe he should move an amendment in the requisite legislation so that upon identifying the architects of corruption, instead of them being jailed for 10 years, again to enjoy taxpayer resources while they are behind bars,
yes,
we actually get a way of executing them in public. We kill them in public so that it's a very good lesson, and the family and friends and all the beneficiaries, all the assets they're enjoying is retained by the state. Right now, people say that that kind of punishment is not humane and it's unacceptable, but it's happening in China. You hear China that the local mayor, a minister has been found corrupt. They're assassinated in public. In Japan, they're pushed to commit suicide. Maybe again we should create that environment. But right now, the architects of corruption today, as we have this conversation, they're dotting various churches in Kenya, and they're having the right seats at the front, and they're being celebrated as successful Kenyans. We must run away from that.
Right.
And then number two, in my view, President Kenyatta today should demand resignations from all the top public servants,
right,
and cabinet secretaries, so that he's got a clean, rather, he can reorganize the cabinet on a clean slate. Because when you speak to people who really understand the corruption fight in Kenya, they say majority of the cabinet secretaries have been implicated either by acts of omission or commission around
right,
corruption. Baraza was pushing for 3 cabinet secretaries to go, and there are many more. For them to make the work of President Kenyatta very easy, a walk in the park,
right,
let them hand in resignations,
right,
and then now the president will have the option to accept or reject.
Honorable Barasa, where do you think this fight is at? And do you think Parliament can has the moral authority to judge the fight on corruption, given what was happening on the floor of the House last week?
We don't have, and that largely is not because we are not capable, but because of our traditions and our systems. And I will tell you for a fact that succession period is the most difficult one. Politics is like a football match. When you are having an opponent team, you mark the striker, and you assign even players to mark that kind of a striker, even if it means you injuring that striker to be taken off from the field that can score goals. It happens. Let me take you back to 2013. In 2013, the marked persons was Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. To have more numbers than the other.
Yeah.
And by then, the opposition now, led by Raila Odinga and other people, it's assumed that they hacked a political tool to get them off the track, not to be cleared to run. That's where now the ICC came in. Because you see in Kenya, Kenyans are not patient. They are very impatient people. They want to use shortcuts. When you have an opponent, you want to eliminate him, so you remain alone, you run alone in the field. And you win. So that was the case in 2013. The tool was ICC. When it came to 2015, 2016, thereabout, it was clear that Raila Odinga, caught by then, was gaining momentum, and they had even plans to merge into a bigger force. You saw even, the government by that time began to crack down on NGOs. You saw the businesses of Hassan Joho being investigated for a number of issues, Kalonzo Musyoka, foundation being suspended, a number of things, all those kind of things. And that was basically to ensure that the train of Raila Odinga is deflated by that time. 2022, it's clear that the front runner is William Samoei Ruto.
All right.
So a lot of activities, a lot of thinking is going to revolve around how do we stop William Samoei Ruto from succeeding Uhuru Kenyatta. And I'm worried that this kind of activities are going to slow down the Big Four and even the fight against corruption. Because in Kenya, everyone wants to be president. And for you to be president, you must compete. And everybody wants to see how best they can compete. We can lie ourselves that hey, we can sing, we can do workshops and seminars saying that, oh, we are going to focus on Big Four agenda, we are going to fight corruptions. But as days tick towards 2022, these things are going to slow down. But I can tell you for free, Ben Kitili, in 2021, whoever wants to be president and he has the power either to prosecute somebody, to influence prosecution, or influence somebody getting off the hook,
Right.
He will do his mathematics. If you have a person who has a very huge political influence and he can assist you get votes from his community and he has committed a crime, he will not be prosecuted.
All right.
So this is something that I really want to pray for Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right.
That if there is something he can do, is to interrogate himself and identify something that he can do to enable him insulated from this kind of things that can really even affect the delivery of the Big Four agenda.
All right. Mark, you have said that President Uhuru Kenyatta has done the most, and from what you can remember in terms of president fighting corruption. But he still has 4 more years in his office, in his presidency. He needs to leave a legacy. And that legacy can very easily be corruption. How does he make sure it is not?
One of the things that he's just said right now, I've just seen a news, breaking news, he's just said that he's going to intensify the fight against corruption, even though it has cost him the loss of his friends. And that's a powerful statement in and of itself. The only thing that you can be very sure that you cannot take away from Uhuru Kenyatta is if he sustains this push against corruption for the next 4 years, that every week we are seeing people being arrested, people being arraigned in court, and then eventually we start to seeing sentencing of these people, and we start seeing state resources being returned, then he will have won the fight against corruption. In my mind, the Uhuru's legacy is in 3 parts. It's the unity of the country via the handshake, it is in the Big Four, and it's in the fight against corruption. On the fight against corruption, it's very easy. He's got a bus, his foot is on the accelerator, he should not remove his foot from the accelerator. As long as he stays there, his legacy is guaranteed as far as corruption is concerned. The Big Four agenda, it's very simple. If he cannot do it on the political side of things, he needs to do it with the people. He needs to make the people feel like they own this Big Four agenda. The handshake will speak for itself. But there are a few elements missing in the fight against corruption that needs to be put in place. Number one, let's not forget the source of the big fish. Let's remember that once upon a time, Kidero was a small fish. Let's remember that when he was CEO of Mumias and people were complaining about him, he was still a small fish. Let's remember that every person who's been implicated in grand corruption in this country was once either a chief or an accountant or a lecturer. They were one small fish. But as the adage proves true time and time again, he who is faithful with little will also be faithful with much. So the person who is faithful with corruption in the village will also be faithful with corruption in parliament, will also be faithful with corruption as a governor, will be faithful with corruption as a president or as a CS. So the truth is, we need to begin to see small fish being fried. So that's critical. Number two, there needs to be a political fight against corruption. What do I mean a political fight? There must be consequence to these MPs who can be bribed for 10,000 shillings. In fact, there should be 2 consequences. Number one, they should be removed from their offices. The second thing, those people who receive proper bribes in this country should stone these people to death for embarrassing their profession, for underrepresenting the corrupt in this country. Number two, CSs. The president needs to be able to fight corruption at the CS level. That means he needs to be able to chase some of these people away. A cabinet reshuffle is needed.
All right. Kipchumba, have the final say. 1 minute only.
Just, I think, a quick one. on what Mark is saying, the president can only bring what we call political confidence in the fight against corruption.
Right.
He has no legal role in the fight against corruption. The fight against corruption...
Do you think he has done that from where you sit?
So far, I think he's doing it. Give it to him that way. That one. He's doing it and he has done it in a big way. But let us look at it, what really needs to be done as we move forward. The fight against corruption is not won at the arrest level. It is not won at the conviction level that you have been convicted. No. What these people did was not that it is not a criminal offense that they killed somebody, that the win is them being convicted. No. The win is when they return what they took away from Kenyans. They took away money. We cannot get money by imprisoning them. We can imprison all the corrupt people, but their kids and their grandchildren will be driving Lamborghinis in this town. We will not have gotten anything. The other thing that we need to do as we move forward, we need to take the war on corruption a notch higher. When we say a notch higher, I mean a simple thing. Let us make corruption or economic offenses a capital offense. That if today Ben is caught stealing and is convicted, you are life imprisoned.
Right.
I know human rights activists have a different view about life imprisonment and death sentence, but that is what should be done. Again, what I need to ask the president to do, when we still have the steam on the war on corruption, there are 3 places he should now focus. The Ministry of Internal Security, we need to take the war there.
Right.
The Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Right.
This is where the variation of tenders and contracts are done.
All right, thank you. You wanted to say something.
I just want something before this master finishes.
Yes.
I want to challenge the president. Yeah, I know he has done a very good job in arresting, making the arrest that he has done now in Nurdin Haji.
Yes.
But I want to challenge Nurdin Haji to arrest a person of political influence. A person, there are some people in this country, when you arrest them, you will see the community demonstrating.
Right.
And I tell you, these are the most corrupt fellows.
All right, thank you. This must.
And my last point is, and this is the divergence from what Kipchumba has indicated, the president has got a unique position to fight corruption. Right now, we have members of his cabinet who have been mentioned times above number in Senate reports and National Assembly reports as being architects of corruption.
Should fire them?
Those ones don't need to wait for Haji to step in.
All right.
He can ask them to resign, or he can fire them.
All right.
That will be a very strong test.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this Sunday for Sunday edition, Kenya's only Sunday morning political talk show. Kipchumba Karori, lawyer and political strategist, political analyst and communication expert. Mark Bichachi, member of parliament for Kimilili, Didmas Barasa, and political risk analyst Dismas Mukua. Thank you for sharing your perspectives with us this Sunday. Let's do this again next Sunday, same time, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sunday edition, as we dissect for you the biggest political and governance issues in the Republic. I am Ben Kitili. Bye for now, and up next, don't go too far, is Zinzi Kibik with the latest news.